Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we're going to start a series where I'm showing you guys how to mix different projects. Every project is completely different, but you'll learn components and learn the fine things about mixing that translate from mix to mix to mix, and then how to apply this to that and create your own style. So let's hop straight into it. Today we're going to be mixing a drill type beat made out of J Cactus sounds. This is my mix from like April. So I was doing a tutorial back then, but now we're actually going to like mix the beat a little bit better. So if I take off the mixing, what I want you guys to understand is that when you're producing, you're doing 90% of the mixing already. Okay, so mixing's job is to, one, combine the vocal inside of your beat, but then two, enhance everything and make it its full potential. Most of the time, you guys are already making the full beat, so you don't need to mix much. So I think we tend to overly mix because we think we're trying to learn, but we're actually overly doing something. Okay, so here's the melody without the effects on it. So part of the actual sound is the effects that we threw on it for the production. If I take it off, doesn't have the same vibe. Here's with the gross beat. That's what creates the vibe of the actual beat, the tone, the vibe. So that's a production technique. All right, so let's start at the mix bus level. Okay, so we're not going to start on the master track. I like to group all my sounds of the beat into one sub mix. We'll call the mix bus in this case. Some people call it stereo out. Some people call it the, what else do people call it? The two bus. Let's just call it the mix bus for now. And to do this in FL, just hit Control, highlight all your tracks for the beat, right click the up arrow down here, and then route to this track only. So now all these tracks are going directly to this sub mix right here. You don't have to do this. It just lets you organize the beat from the vocals separately. So the first thing I want to do with this is figure out the volume. I want to think, what kind of tone am I trying to get? Am I going more aggressive? Am I going softer? Am I just trying to make the beat wider? What is the goal? So there's different goals. Am I trying to make the beat wider? Am I trying to make it softer? Am I trying to make it more aggressive? Does the bass need to dominate? So let's listen to the beat and see what needs to actually be pulled out. So right now I think we could push the bass a little bit more to be a little more aggressive. So I'm going to mix into the mix bus. There's different tools you guys could use. My favorite is Standard Clip. This is like just a go-to starting point. Okay, so let's go to Standard Clip. And what this is doing is shaving off the peaks and reshaping the tone. I like to do a -2 threshold to start. And basically you could also push this saturator as well to get more harmonics out of your sound. I'll show you guys what it sounds like, but you don't always need the saturator. Just be careful with the saturator. Just turn it up. So for this tone, for this genre, it's a nice sound. It adds that ripple over top of the kick that we need. So it's a nice sound. Now, if it becomes too jarring and too full, I'll pull that back. So I'm starting with the group first. Then we're going to individual sounds. Okay, so the next thing I could think of, as far as what I would normally do, is I would think about everything as a group. So now I really love the BX XL Total Harmonic Distortion. It's called XL. So what we're going to do is listen to each one of these bands. Let's solo them. Here's the low mids. Let me make sure I go to where the kick starts. So anytime your beat feels empty, we could use harmonic distortion to fill out more of that frequency area. So let's try that. You can hear that crunch coming out of the bass. It's telling me on the meter that our balance is more focused on the mid. So let's listen to the sides of this information to see if we can make the beat wider without making it so wide. So here's the side information we're soloing. And now we can use that harmonic distortion to pull up on the textures on the side of the beat, which it doesn't seem like a lot of my instruments are panned to the side. So let's see if they become more frequent as we go throughout this beat. Let's see if there's a section where we get more of the instruments on the side. Let's see. So most of this beat is mono. Even though it feels wide and full, it's mostly mono. So let's turn this off. But now we feel that texture. So let me A/B this. This is starting to become one of my favorite texture tools. So if I turn this off, the beat's cool, but it's not like there. And now we can feel that texture. So now I'm going to go to the individual sounds and say, what do I want to change? So for this, let's take off the 808. I forgot to turn off all the plugins. So let's hear what it sounds like without our corrective plugins. Now that we have our own harmonic distortion, we don't necessarily need decapitator like we had in the 808. It depends on the 808. Every 808 does not need decapitator. And if you have speakers, I would recommend you use speakers if you could hear the low end. Decapitator does something with the low end where it makes it just feel it makes the 808 just fill up the entire room. Okay, so you can't really hear that over headphones, but I'm going to use it on my headphones because I can hear pretty low on these headphones. These are Audeze MM500s. These are really good. I keep it on mode A and I just turn the drive up a little bit, and it just makes the 808 feel more full and like in the low end. And again, you don't need this every single time. This is just for this 808 because it's a little bit softer. So I put that on the wrong track apparently. Let's find the 808. Let's send it to 13. I wonder why these are different. Oh, I think I had it soft and then I switched it up. Okay. So I wanted one section to be softer and then another section to be more aggressive. So that's why I separated these out during production. Might just be routed wrong anyhow, but let's make it the same track anyhow. Okay, so here's Decapitator. The goal is just to take a really sub-low frequency and make it audible in the higher range, so that's why we're using Decapitator. Keep in mind though that we're using the harmonic distortion which creates upper harmonics with the BX-XL. So we're doing two stages of cranking the 808 basically. We're doing Decapitator and then we're doing the XL. So you don't want to overly do it by combining those two plugins too much. So I'm just letting you know what I'm using that for. Okay, next up. So let's say I don't want my kick to clash with the 808 if they ever overlap. I can add a Pro Q3. This is just one plugin of many. You could also use Soothe, but let's use Pro Q3. And you could use a multi-band compressor like C6 from Waves or even FabFilter Pro MB3 or MB Pro MB. Find your kick, find your 808 in this case. Right click sidechain to this track. We're going to go to the 808. Go to the settings tab, go to processing, right click, selector kick is the input for the sidechain. Go down here where it says analyzer, switch this to collision mode. And what I want to do is it will show up red wherever the kick and the 808 are overlapping. So right here at about 30 Hertz, they're overlapping. So what I want to do is prevent the overlapping. Let's use a dynamic range here and then click on where it says auto, click this little icon here to turn on the sidechain. Now every time the kick hits, it will lower the 808 only in this frequency range. And I'd recommend you guys take out about 3 dB, 6 dB, increments of 3. So now the kick and the 808 can live at the same time without clashing so much. another area to check, I know we covered it already, but the mids and the sides. So anytime your beat feels like it has too much energy in one place, check the mids and sides. We're going to add a node here, switch this to stereo placement side, and then we're going to solo this. And just sweep around and listen to where you guys think you're hearing too much energy building up. So around 700 is where it starts to start thickening. We have it really at 200. And then also at 60. Now let's do the same exact thing, but this time with the mid signal. So 700, 500 is where that knock of the kick comes in. And keep in mind, red doesn't mean bad, it just means that's where a lot of energy is starting to build up. It's really the only thing I could think of is on the side information. We don't need to force moves here, but what we could do is just turn the flute down a little bit on the side. Now we don't have to do this as an entire mix bus. We could go to the actual flute and turn it down. We're right here at about 400 hertz. We're getting a little buildup. Let's turn that down. This is only on the side, so keep in mind when we use side EQ, we're narrowing the sound. So too much side EQ, too much cutting, I should say, on the side can make your sound feel collapsed. So we're losing out on that stereo wide feel. So you got to be careful to cut on your side information unless you actually need to. Not that there's a rule, but something to keep in mind. Let's also cut around 60, so now the bass will feel more centered. Not a rule, but keeping the bass centered will help us really feel the impact of that bass. And plus, those could be ghost frequencies we didn't realize were building up. I can't tell if the red is switches for mid versus side information. That could just be the entire signal. So me cutting here, I don't hear anything audibly happening in this zone. I do hear 60 hertz on the side. So that's when you gotta use your ears, because right now it's tricking me to think that we had information on the side when I think that's just looking at the entire signal. Either way, we're cutting the lows. Okay, so let's A-B this. Let's turn it off. Here's before. Now there is a little bit more push-pull, a little more bouncy stuff, but that's very smooth. So we're trading that off for the harder sound. Here's on. So we can go to this sound. I think it's this sound here. I don't know what sound that is. Okay, so this sound slowed down was creating that tone that we were hearing. So let's go to the actual group itself. We're not going to EQ the entire beat. We're EQing a sound in this case. This is only when I need to target something do I go to the specific sound. I'm not overly mixing every single sound in the mix. But in here, I could tell this sound is giving me an issue, so let's go to this sound specifically and chop out the lows so that we don't have to deal with them later in the mix. We could do a hard cut here. It doesn't need to be dynamic. Let's just do -6 because I don't want this frequency. So we're truly trying to tame just that area. It's building up a lot at 180. And also we have some at 80. So let's just cut. Now we could use a high pass filter, but that's going to get rid of some of the natural texture. We don't want to get rid of the entire sound. So the sound still feels low and it feels full without, we're just not overdoing it. And for this beat, there's nothing really else that we need to make stand out. We don't need to slam this beat through a limiter because it's loud enough. But if we do want to take this track and make it a little bit louder, we can mess with the limiter. I'd recommend Ozone stuff. So Ozone 11 Maximizer is probably the best limiter that can do a lot of stuff all in one. So let's switch this to mode 4. We're going to do the modern mode, and let's do the upward compression. That's one of my favorites. Their soft clipping is really good. And let's just turn this up. Let's start with these down here before we start with the gain knob. So these will make the beat feel more filled out. So we can get a lot of aggression out of the soft clipper built into this maximizer. The best part is you could push it really hard without it sounding bad. Now, to my ear, we're pushing this beat way beyond its limits. You could push the beat harder, but I think we've gotten the maximum loudness out of the energy that we're trying to go for. If we push it harder and harder, it's just going to sound loud, but we're going to lose that coolness factor. All right, so let's hear it all the way through. So it shows you don't need a ton of plugins when you mix, but every mix is completely different if you're dealing with acoustic sounds, synthetic sounds, how much aggression of the sound you're going for, how much width. Every track is completely different. So when you're learning mixing, try to understand that you guys don't need all the techniques applied to every beat all the time. But in order to learn the technique, you have to do it over and over again. So just understand that difference. All right, guys, it's Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. Subscribe for your new piece.